Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a lovely half term. It's lovely to be back in school. I had a great half term. It was really nice to spend time with my family, and it was really nice to relax a little bit. Now, during today's assembly, I'm using a new piece of software. It's the one that Mr. Knowles uses. I'm not used to it yet, so I might be a bit rubbish at it, so you have to bear with me. It might be that I jump around and things like that, so I am sorry if that's the case. Also, I might keep looking around the screen because I'm trying to find different things. But bear with me. Hopefully it will mean that my assemblies in the future will get better because I'm going through the process of learning. Today's assembly is all about kindness. The reason I'm talking to you about kindness is because last week it was Random Acts of Kindness Week. Now, we couldn't celebrate that in school because we weren't here, we were at home. But I thought I would talk to you about kindness in some of our assemblies. Now, why is kindness important? Kindness is so important because it makes everyone involved feel happier. It makes the person who you are kind to feel happier, but the great thing about it is it also makes you feel happier when you are kind to someone. Isn't that fantastic? I thought about our values, which is why I've got them there. One of our values isn't kindness. It doesn't say kindness within Richard, but I think that kindness is weaved into some of them. What I would like you to do is, if you're in school, I would like you in your class to talk to each other about which of our values includes kindness. Maybe there's more than one. And if you're at home, you can talk to whoever you are at home with about that. Okay, I'm going to try and read you the story now. Let's hope it works. So, the story is called What I Grew in Larry's Garden. And the way that I'm reading this to you is through an amazing website called Get Epic, where you can read lots of brilliant books. And hopefully you will start to be able to use this in your classes in the near future. It won't happen straight away, but we're trialling it at the moment. So, I'm going to read you the story, and I hope you enjoy it. In a sprawling city, in a leafy neighbourhood, on a narrow street, in a cosy home with a tiny yard, lived a girl named Grace. Next door, in a yard just as tiny, Grace's neighbour Larry had a garden. In his garden, Larry grew all sorts of vegetables, but not ordinary ones. There were buttery yellow carrots and purple potatoes, rainbow chard and scarlet runner beans, rosy tomatoes the colour of ripe peaches, and black ones with red inside. "You won't find these in most grocery stores," declared Larry, admiring a zebra-striped tomato. Grace thought Larry's garden was one of the wonders of the world. Every spare moment she had, Grace helped Larry in his garden. Together they watered and weeded, planted and pruned, hoed and harvested. And when bugs burrowed into the carrots and slugs and snails chewed the lettuce, Grace and Larry would solve the problem together. "We can figure this out," said Larry. At the library, Grace learnt that lots of bugs don't like the smell of marigolds. Grace and Larry planted marigolds among the carrots, and the bugs disappeared. That was a really kind thing of Grace to do, wasn't it? She used her own time to try and solve a problem for Larry. As for the slugs and snails, they picked them off with their bare fingers. "Our hard work will be worth it," said Larry, popping a slug into a bucket. "That is important. We're not just growing vegetables." "What are we growing?" asked Grace. "Wait and see," said Larry. I wonder if you can predict what Larry is also growing. Have a think, have a chat. Keeping squirrels away from tomatoes was a bigger problem. "We can figure this out," said Larry, scratching his head. They built a little cage out of wire. The tomato plants could grow inside the wire, but the squirrels could not get the fruit. "Sometimes fences are handy," said Larry. When summer ended and autumn came, Grace helped Larry gather and dry seeds to save for next spring. Later that winter, they started to grow the tomato seeds in little cups. There were hundreds of them. Larry, a teacher, took the tomato seedlings to school so his students could look after them. What will they do with all these plants? Grace wanted to know. That's the best part, replied Larry. These are not just tomato plants. What are they? Asked Grace. Wait and see, said Larry. Winter melted away and spring sprouted. One warm afternoon, Grace found Larry on his porch with a pile of papers on his lap. You wanted to know what my students would do with our plants? He said. Listen to these letters. I'm going to read you some of the letters now. Dear friend, I'm the kid who used to steal pears from your tree. I'm giving you this tomato plant to say sorry. Sincerely, Matthew. Dear Mrs. Bianchi, I live next door to you, but we hardly ever talk. You have the most amazing flower garden. It makes me happy just to see it. I'm giving you this tomato plant to tell you that you make the world more beautiful for a lot of people. Best wishes, Amrit. Dear bus driver, I rode on your school bus for years. You were always so friendly to all the kids. I'm giving you this tomato plant to say thank you. From Admira. Aren't those letters lovely? I would love to receive a letter and a tomato plant like that. That's something really kind, isn't it? My students will give these plants away, and they wrote letters to tell why. They wrote these letters to tell why, explained Larry. Every plant is a gift, a little green tendril reaching out to someone, connecting people. Now I see, cried Grace. We were growing a whole lot more than tomatoes. Exactly, said Larry. Look, in the pictures you can see the people receiving their tomato plants in their letters. But a shadow fell. One afternoon, Grace went outside to find Larry sitting among his tomatoes. The plants looked wilted. So did Larry. And then Grace saw why. The neighbour on the other side added a big panel to the top of his fence, blocking the sun out of Larry's garden. So much for my tomatoes, Larry said sadly. The looming fence made the garden seem smaller than ever, just a tiny patch of earth. Grace looked at the drooping tomato plants and thought about how they spread kindness. She gave Larry a hug. We can figure this out, she said. Larry went next door to speak to the neighbour, but they could not agree. He says his fence makes him feel safe, said Larry with a sigh. I guess that makes sense, said Grace slowly, thinking about the handy fence that protected the tomato plants from the hungry squirrels. But I have another idea. What's that? Wondered Larry. Wait and see, replied Grace. The next morning, when Larry's neighbours stepped outside to get the newspaper, there on the porch was a small pot and a packet of seeds and a note. Dear neighbour, I live 2 doors down from you, and I like to help Larry in his garden. I'm giving you these seeds to say I hope we can all be friends. I think having good friends is the best way to feel safe. Sincerely, Grace. P.S. I have a plan. Could you meet me outside on Saturday morning? That's a good idea by Grace, isn't it? That weekend, Larry heard hammering. When he went outside, he found Grace in the yard next door, working side by side with his neighbour. The high panel on the fence was gone. So was the shadow. Now they were pounding nails into the fence and tying strings to make a kind of ladder. Larry, cried Grace, come and see. Larry peered over the fence and saw seed packets. We're planting beans, explained Grace. They're going to climb up the fence. Larry's neighbour looked up from the string he was knotting. I figure we could put a fence to better use, he said. That afternoon, Larry and Grace and their neighbour sat down together and feasted on fresh lemonade and cherry tomatoes from Larry's garden. They were still warm from the sun. So, I'm going to pop my other screen back on now. There we go. And I'm going to make myself slightly bigger. There we go. So, in that story, there were lots of different acts of kindness. In that story, people wrote notes and gave plants. Now, sometimes our acts of kindness involve giving an item or writing something down, showing our gratitude, which means how thankful we are, how grateful we are. But sometimes our kindness can be much smaller acts. So it could be something as small as saying thank you, or holding a door open, or just saying good morning to somebody. So this week, your mission is to perform some acts of kindness to people around school, at home, wherever you may be. I'm not particularly good at doing big acts of kindness, and I'm trying to work on it. I was speaking to my wife about it last week, and she said that I do need to get a little bit better at it. So I'm going to be doing it too, and in my assembly later on in the week, I'm going to tell you how I have got on. Right. I'm going to stop speaking now. I'm going to stop the assembly. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will speak to you again soon. Goodbye.